Hi guys! Welcome to the Multimodality Learning Program of St. Mary's University Senior High School. I am Diana C. Hermoso, your basic calculus teacher. We are now in the fourth week of our lesson on the slope of the tangent line and derivative of a function. Particularly, our learning objectives for this session is for us to illustrate the tangent line to the graph of a function at a given point. Second, apply the definition of the derivative of a function at a given number. Third, relate the derivative of a function to the slope of the tangent line. So, meron lang tayong tatlong objectives. Okay, we start with the concept of tangent lines and secant lines by recalling what tangent lines and secant lines as presented in your geometry. Usually, our tangent line is visualized using a circle and a line passing through the circle or intersecting the circle at one point. For example, we have your line. Next, for a secant line naman, we have a circle and a line intersecting the circle in 2 points. In calculus, we shall use the same concept. However, instead of circle, we shall make use of function. So for example, we have the graph of a quadratic function. And we have line L here intersecting the graph of f of x at point, say for example, we have point A with the coordinate of x sub 0 and y sub 0. Whereas a secant line, just the same, it will intersect the function in 2 points. Say for example, the same passing through x sub 0, y sub 0, and point B at x sub 1, y sub 1. And say for example, this is line M or line N. Okay, we have line L as the tangent line and line N as your secant line. Another thing that we have to recall is the concept of slope. In algebra, when we say slope, that is represented by the symbol M and solved by y sub 2 minus y sub 1 all over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. Adapting this same formula, we can say that the slope of the secant line will be equal to, we have correspondingly, y sub 1 minus y sub 0 all over x sub 1 minus x sub 0. Again, x sub 1 and y sub 1 is the coordinate of B, and x sub 0 and y sub 0 is the coordinate of A. Okay, say for example, we try to move the secant line towards the tangent line. So for example, from this initial position, itong initial position ng M, i-move natin yan in such a way that your point B move towards point A. So we have our initial position, second position, and so on and so forth until line N becomes line L. Therefore, we can now identify the slope of the tangent line by approximating using the slope of the secant line. Theoretically, the slope of the tangent line will be equal to the limit of the slope of the secant line as x sub 1 approaches x sub 0. Kumbaga, in ordinary term, ang kukunin natin is the limit, ililimit natin yung slope ng secant line in such a way that yung x sub 1 natin dito, correspondingly, lalapit ng lalapit dun sa x sub 0. Habang palapit siya ng palapit sa x sub 0, yung secant line magiging tangent line. Therefore, what we're trying to limit here is the slope of the secant line to approximate the slope of the tangent line. Therefore, the slope of the tangent line then is equal to, substituting the formula for the secant line, limit of y sub 1 minus y sub 0 all over x sub 1 minus x sub 0 as x sub 1 approaches x sub 0. Taking for example, y sub 0 be equal to f of x sub 0. So ito, nagsasubstitute lang tayo. Instead of using y sub 0, we make use of f of x sub 0. So instead of x sub 1, we make use of x in general, so that your y sub 1 be equal to f of x sub 1, which is equal to f of x. So tinatry natin dito is to generalize the slope of all tangent lines given this specific example. Therefore, the slope then of the tangent line will be equal to yung y sub 1 dito, pinalitan natin ng f of x minus f of x sub 0 all over x minus x sub 0 as x approaches x sub 0. So that is just from this formula, changing the notation for us to arrive in the formula for tangent line. So ito yung formula natin for the slope of the tangent line. Again, the limit of f of x minus f of x sub 0 all over x minus x sub 0 as x approaches x sub 0. Okay, we try to apply the formula to our specific example, such as find the slope of the line tangent to the graph of f of x equals 5 minus 2x minus x squared at the point negative 3, positive 2. Again, kung babalikan natin, our formula is as follow. Okay, therefore, the slope of the tangent line m sub tan is equal to the limit of f of x minus f of x sub 0 all over x minus x sub 0 as x approaches x sub 0. Okay, question. Saan natin kukunin yung mga values ng x sub 0 and f of x sub 0? That will be the same coordinates of the given point. For example, we have point P which is at negative 3, positive 2. Your x sub 0 will be negative 3 and f of x sub 0 will be positive 2, which means that substituting, that will be equal to the limit of f of x, that is the original function, 5 minus 2x minus x squared minus f of x sub 0 which is positive 2 all over x minus negative of 3 as x approaches x sub 0 which is negative 3. Next, we can now combine constants in the numerator, that is the limit of 5 minus 2 which is equal to 3 minus 2x minus x squared all over x. Change your operation but change the sign of the subtrahend which becomes x plus 3 as x approaches negative 3. Next, we can proceed to factoring the numerator, such as what are the possible factors of positive 3? So, pwedeng 3 and of course we have 1. Next, what are the possible factors of negative x squared? So, pwedeng plus x and then minus x. Ito, tinatry lang natin. So, for example, we try to verify kung ito talaga yung factor ng numerator. So, for example, i-multiply lang natin yung first term with the last term and middle term. So, for example, we have 3 times x is negative 3x. X times positive 1 is equal to positive x. So, kukunin natin yung sum if it is not equal to the middle term. So, for example, negative 3x plus x is equal to negative 2x, which means that this is the factor of the numerator divided by x plus 3 as x approaches negative 3. Next, by commutative property, x plus 3 is also equal to 3 plus x, which means that we can now cancel common factor in the numerator and denominator. We are left with the limit of 1 minus x as x approaches negative 3. Meaning, we can now evaluate by direct substitution. So, we have, kung nag-direct substitution, tanggalin mo na yung limit. So, we have 1 minus a negative of 3, which is equal to positive 4. Therefore, we can say that the slope of the tangent line to the graph of f of x equals 5 minus 2x minus x squared to the point negative 3, 2 is equal to positive 4. So, that's our first example. Okay, second example, find the equation of the tangent line to the graph of f of x is equal to the square root of x plus 2 at the point negative 1, 1. So just the same, our formula for the slope of the tangent line is equal to the limit of f of x minus f of x sub 0 all over x minus x sub 0 as x approaches x sub 0. Okay, next, again, for our given point, negative 1 is x sub 0 and positive 1 is f of x sub 0. Next, substitution, we have the limit of f of x which is equal to x plus 2 minus, we have positive 1 all over x minus a negative of 1 as x approaches negative 1. So, ito, direct substitution lang. Okay, next step. Ano kayang gagawin natin? So, pwede natin i-simplify muna habang iniisip natin yung isusunod nating steps such as, i-copy lang natin yung numerator, minus 1, and then simplify the denominator. For example, change the operation but change the sign of the subtrahend. So, we have x plus 1 as x approaches negative 1. Okay, in this case, if we try to directly substitute negative 1 in our expression, so for example, direct substitution, negative 1 plus 2 minus 1 all over negative 1 plus 1, that will be equal to, ayan, so 2 plus negative 1 is 1, square root of 1 is 1, 1 minus 1 is 0, all over 0, which means that it is indeterminate form. Anong ibig sabihin kapag indeterminate in terms of the limit? Ibig sabihin nun, the limit exists but we have to simplify either by rationalizing, by multiplying by its conjugate, or pwedeng by simplifying complex fraction. So in this case, since meron tayong radical symbol sa taas and then we have a binomial, pwede nating i-multiply yan by its conjugate. So paano ba yung conjugate? Ikakopy lang natin yung mga same terms such as x plus 2, but of course change one of the signs of either the first term or the second term. So for example, gawin natin instead of negative, magiging positive 1. So plus 1. So yun yung magiging conjugate natin. Minus yan and then this is plus. All over, by identity, kung ano yung minultiply mo sa numerator, ganun din dapat ang imumultiply sa denominator. So we have square root of x plus 2 plus 1 and then we can now simplify. So para simplify, binomial times a binomial and they have different signs. Kung different signs, you can just multiply the first term of each binomial and the last term. So for example, square root of x plus 2 times square root of x plus 2. Matatanggal yung radical symbol, ang matitira is x plus 2. That is your first term. Negative 1, first terms, so x plus 2 yan. Negative 1 times positive 1 is of course negative 1. So yun na yung product ng numerator. Next, anong gagawin natin sa denominator? So pwedeng i-copy lang natin as is, multiplied by square root of x plus 2 plus 1. So yun na yung magiging product natin as x approaches negative 1. Again, minultiply natin sa conjugate and this is our product. Next, we continue our step here. So that is the limit. We can now simplify the numerator. So I have x plus 2 minus 1 is x plus 1 all over x plus 1 multiplied by the square root of x plus 2 plus 1 as x approaches negative 1. Next, may nakikita ba kayong common factor natin? Siyempre, x plus 1 in the numerator will be cancelled. Of course, x plus 1 in the denominator. So we are left with the limit of, pag na-cancel, ang matitira is 1 all over square root of x plus 2 plus 1 as x approaches negative 1. Next, we can now directly substitute. So we have 1 all over the square root of negative 1 plus 2 plus 1. Next, simplifying further, that will be equal to 1 all over negative 1 plus 2 is 1. Square root of 1 is 1. So we have 1 plus 1 is equal to positive 2. Which means that the slope of the tangent line to the graph of the function at point negative 1, 1 is equal to 1/2. Yan po. Okay, we proceed to the definition of derivative of a function. When we say derivative, the derivative is read as f prime of x of a function f at a number x in its domain is the expression obtained in the following limit. So ito po yung magiging formula natin. F prime of x is equal to the limit of f of x plus h minus f of x all over h as h approaches 0. Now, this is often referred as the limit definition of derivative. So, pag tinatanong, what is the limit definition? Ito yung sasagot natin. And this is also called the rate of change of y with respect to x. In some other references, instead of h, ang ginagamit nila is delta x. So, delta x here is also the same with h po. Okay, ito po yung mga ginagamit nilang ibang notations for derivatives such as y prime, dx of f of x, or d over dx, or dy over dx. Just the same, these are all f prime of x. And for this video, siguro gagamitin natin is f prime of x or y prime. In some other video, gagamitin natin is d all over dx. Okay, we proceed to our first example, applying the limit definition, such as find the derivative of f of x is equal to 5x minus 1 with respect to x using the limit definition. Again, our limit definition is f prime of x is equal to the limit of f of x plus h minus f of x all over h as h approaches 0. Ibig sabihin, kailangan nating hanapin muna yung value ng f of x plus h. In general mathematics, when you say f of x plus h, we evaluate the given function at x plus h. Ibig sabihin, lahat ng x sa function, papalitan natin ng x plus h, which means that our function f of x plus h will be 5 multiplied by x plus h minus 1. Next, distributing, that is equal to 5x plus 5h minus 1. Next, we can now substitute. So, we have limit of f of x plus h. Ito rin ilalagay natin. So, we have 5x plus 5h minus 1 minus the f of x, which is 5x minus 1 all over h as h approaches 0. Next, ito po again ha, direct substitution. Next, we have limit of, we can now simplify, 5x plus 5h minus 1 minus distribute the subtraction or negative 1. Negative 1 times 5 is negative 5x. Negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1 all over h as h approaches 0. Next, may nakikita ba kayong pwede nating cancelin or pwede nating isimplify sa numerator? Okay, syempre, pwede nating cancelin ng 5x sa negative 5x, negative 1, and then positive 1. We are left with the limit of, so ito na natira, so we have 5h all over h as h approaches 0. Which means that we can now simplify the expression. So that is equal to limit of, cancel na natin. So we have limit of 5 as h approaches 0. And from our previous video on the differentiation rules, we have said that the limit of a constant as x approaches a will always be equal to the constant. Meaning, the limit of 5 as x or h approaches 0 is equal to 5. If f of x is equal to 5x minus 1, f prime of x is equal to positive 5. We proceed to our second example. Find the derivative of f of x equals x squared plus 3x with respect to x using the limit definition. Again, our limit definition is f prime of x is equal to the limit of f of x plus h minus f of x all over h as h approaches 0. But before we proceed with substitution, we now first identify f of x plus h. Again, all we have to do is to change all x values to x plus h. So we have x plus h squared plus 3 multiplied by x plus h. So again, pinalitan lang natin lahat ng x with x plus h. Okay, next, simplify. Ano ba ang x plus h squared? So, kung long solution yan, so for example, we have this part, so we have x plus h and then x plus h, that will be equal to h squared plus xh plus x, ayun pa ganyan, xh plus x squared. Meaning, x squared plus, we have 2xh plus h squared. Or simply, that's equal to x squared plus x times h times 2. Multiply mo lang ng 2 yan. X times h times 2 is equal to 2xh plus h squared. Plus, distribute mo na din. So, we have 3x plus 3h. Meaning, by direct substitution, that will be equal to the limit of x squared plus 2xh plus h squared plus 3x plus 3h minus the function which is x squared plus 3x all over h as h approaches 0. Meaning, we can now simplify the numerator that's equal to the limit of x squared plus 2xh plus h squared plus 3x plus 3h. Negative 1 times x squared is negative x squared. Negative 1 times 3x is negative 3x all over h as h approaches 0. Siyempre, tignan natin kung may mga makakancel tayo such as x squared and then we have 3x. Meaning, our simplified form is 2xh plus h squared plus 3h all over h as h approaches 0. Again, ito yung numerator natin and of course we have denominator. Okay, next, we can now simplify our numerator. Continue natin dito by of course factoring out common factors in the terms among the numerator. For example, ano ba yung common sa first term, second term, third term? Obviously, that is h multiplied by ayan, so factor out natin, tanggalin natin yung h in each term. Such as, kung tinanggal natin yan, the factor will be h times 2x plus, tanggalan natin ng isa, so we have h plus, tanggalan natin yung h, so we have 3 all over h as h approaches 0. Meaning, we can now cancel h in the numerator and denominator. So, we are left with the limit of 2x plus h plus 3. As h approaches 0. Next, we can now evaluate the limit. That is, lahat ng h, papalitan natin ng 0. So, we have 2x plus 0 plus 3, meaning that's equal to 2x plus 3. Therefore, that will be f prime of x. Given the function, the derivative is 2x plus 3. Okay, next. Paano naman kapag instead of x, we evaluate f prime of negative 2? So just the same, we have our steps such as first identifying f prime of x, which is again equal to, ito wag niyong kakalimutan, f of x plus h minus f of x all over h as h approaches 0. In our given function, f of x plus h is equal to 1 minus lahat ng x. So, we have 4 multiplied by x plus h minus 3 times x plus h squared. Okay, sabi natin kanina, we can simplify here. So, we have 1 minus 4 times h is 4h. 1 or negative 4 times h is negative 4h minus 3 multiplied by, sabi natin kanina, ang x plus h squared is x squared plus 2xh plus h squared. And we can now simplify further. H minus 3x squared. Negative 3 times positive 2xh is negative 6xh. Negative 3 times h squared is negative 3h squared. So we can now substitute our function. So we have limit of f of x plus h, which is 1 minus 4x minus 4h minus 3x squared minus 6xh minus 3h squared minus the original function, which is 1 minus 4x minus 3x squared all over h as h approaches 0. Okay, so we can now simplify by, of course, distribution. So we have limit of 1 minus 4x minus 4h minus 3x squared minus 6xh minus 3h squared. Negative times the positive is negative 1. Negative times the negative is positive 4x. Negative times the negative is positive 3x squared all over h as h approaches 0. Okay, next, we can now cancel mga terms natin na pwedeng cancel such as 1 and negative 1, 4x and then 4x, and then we have negative 3x and then positive 3x squared. So we are left with the limit of negative 4h minus 6xh minus 3h squared all over h as h approaches 0. Okay, next, we can now factor out h in the numerator such as the limit of h multiplied by negative 4 minus 6x minus 3h all over h as h approaches 0. Kung nalilito kayo kung paano mag-factor out, so tanggal-tanggalin nyo lang yung h in each of the terms, and then kung gusto nyo i-recheck, i-distribute na lang ulit natin. So we have h times negative 4, h times negative 6x, h times negative 3h. Next, we can now cancel h in the numerator and denominator, and you are left with the limit of negative 4 minus 6x minus 3h as h approaches 0. Meaning, we can now directly substitute 0 to h. So we have negative 4 minus 6x minus 3 times 0. Meaning, that's equal to negative 4 minus 6x. So that is f prime of x. What if ang tinatanong is f prime of positive 2? Siyempre, isa-substitute lang natin. So we have negative 4 minus 6 times negative 2. Okay, that is equal to negative 4 plus 6 times 2 is positive 12, which is equal to positive 8. Which means that f of negative 2 is equal to positive 8. So yan, medyo magulo po yung solution natin. In the end, our answer is f prime of negative 2 is equal to 8. So yan po yung answer natin. Okay, another example. Evaluate f prime of 3 for the function f of x is equal to 1 all over x. Okay, just the same, we first identify f prime of x, which is the limit of f of x plus h minus f of x all over h as h approaches 0. Okay, for our given function, our f of x plus h is equal to 1 all over x plus h, which means that the limit of f of x plus h is 1 all over x plus h minus 1 all over x all over h as h approaches 0. Next, by direct substitution, magiging 1 all over x minus 1 all over x all over 0. Ibig sabihin, magiging indeterminate yung function. So, kailangan nating pwedeng conjugate, pwedeng simplify, or pwedeng factoring. Ano kayang pwedeng applicable dito for the given expression? We see here that meron tayong fractions in the numerator and we have a denominator. Ibig sabihin, pwede nating isimplify muna yung buong numerator. Malay nyo, meron tayong makancel. Such as, paano mag-simplify? Pag-isahin natin yung dalawang fractions sa numerator by getting first the least common denominator. Ano ba ang least common denominator ng x plus h and then x? O, since wala silang common factor, kukunin lang natin yung dalawang denominator as their common denominator. Next, divide the common denominator by each of the denominator and multiply in the numerator. For example, x times x plus h divided by x plus h is x. X times 1 is x. O, next, x times x plus h divided by x is x plus h. X plus h times negative 1 is negative x minus h. Ino yung magiging numerator natin all over h as h approaches 0. We can now simplify the numerator by canceling x and then x. So we are left with the limit of negative h all over x times x plus h all over h as h approaches 0. Mas mahaba po yung bar natin between the numerator here and h since this is the main division or main operation, that is division. Ito parang sub-operation lang siya. Okay, next, we can now simplify. So numerator, that's over 1 by getting the reciprocal and changing the operation. So this is division, gawin nating multiplication. So we have copy the fraction in our numerator. So we have negative h all over x times x plus h multiplied by the reciprocal, which is 1 all over h as h approaches 0. Next, we can now cancel So that is equal to the limit of negative 1 all over x multiplied by x plus h as h approaches 0. We can now directly substitute 0 to h. So we have negative 1 all over x times x plus 0, which is equal to negative 1 all over x squared, meaning f prime of x is equal to negative 1 all over x squared. Which means further that f prime of positive 3 is equal to negative 1 all over, we have 3 squared, and negative 3 squared or positive 3 squared is negative 1 all over 9. Therefore, f prime of 3 is equal to negative 1 all over 9. Example number 3. If y is equal to the square root of x, find y prime and the value of y prime when x is equal to 9. Okay, sabi natin kanina, f of x is also equal to y, which means that our given function is also f of x is equal to y. Which means that kung hanapin natin yung y prime, you're also looking for f prime of x. Meaning, f prime of x is equal to the limit of, again, f of x plus h minus f of x all over h as h approaches 0. Okay, next, identify f of x plus h, which is equal to the square root of x plus h. So we have the numerator equal to the square root of x plus h, yan na yun, minus square root of x all over h as h approaches 0. Next, kapag ganyan niya, multiply na natin ng conjugate such as, i-copy lang natin yung mga terms x plus h. And then, instead of minus, gawin natin plus square root of x all over square root of x plus h plus square root of x. Meaning, we can now multiply correspondingly square root of x plus h times square root of x plus h. That will be equal to x plus h. Next, negative square root of x times positive square root of x. Negative x all over denominator, i-copy lang natin. So we have h multiplied by square root of x plus h plus square root of x as h approaches 0. Next, we can now simplify the numerator. Cancel. So we have the limit of h all over h multiplied by square root of x plus h plus square root of x as h approaches 0. Next, cancel h. So we're left with the limit of 1 all over square root of x plus h plus square root of x as h approaches 0. Lahat ng h papalitan ng 0. So we have 1 all over square root of x plus square root of x. And square root of x plus square root of x is automatically 1 all over 2 square root of x. Therefore, y prime is equal to 1 all over 2 square root of x. Or you can rationalize still our function, pero pwedeng ganyan na. Okay. How about for the value ng y prime when x is equal to 9? So, gagawin lang natin dyan, evaluate f prime of 9, which is equal to y all over 2 multiplied by the square root of 9. And square root of 9 is 3. 3 times 2 is 6. Therefore, when x is equal to 9, y prime is equal to 1 all over 6. That is our third example. O question, how is the derivative related to the slope of the tangent line to the curve at a given point? How is the derivative related to the slope of the line tangent to a curve at any given point? O, the answer is, the derivative is essentially a value of the slope, particularly the slope of the line tangent to the function at any point on the curve. Again, the derivative is essentially a value of a slope, particularly the slope of the line tangent to the function at any point on the curve. Which means that kung ano yung derivative na nakukuha natin, that is the value of the slope of the tangent line. Ibig sabihin, the slope of the tangent line is further equal to the derivative. Ayan po. So, try natin i-verify using our last example. Find the slope of the tangent line to the curve of f of x equals x squared plus 2 at the given point 1, 3. So, first, ang ginagamit natin kanina, ang m sa tan natin is equal to the limit of f of x minus f of x sub 0 all over x minus x sub 0 as x approaches x sub 0. Okay, sabi natin, at a given point, x coordinate is x sub 0, y coordinate is f of x sub 0, which means that is equal to the limit of f of x, which is x plus or x squared plus 2 minus we have 3 all over x minus 1 as x approaches positive 1. Meaning, we can have x squared and 2 minus 3 is equal to negative 1 all over x minus 1 as x approaches positive 1. Next, factoring our numerator, that's equal to x plus 1, again, difference of 2 squares, kaya kakunin mo lang yung square root. So, we have x minus 1 all over x minus 1 as x approaches positive 1. Next, cancel common factors. M sub tan equal to the limit of x plus 1 as x approaches positive 1. Next, evaluating the limit is equal to 1 plus 1, which is equal to 2. Therefore, the slope of the tangent line at the point 1, 3 is equal to 2. Paano naman paggagamit tayo ng derivative? So, we have f prime of x is equal to the limit of f of x plus h minus f of x all over h as h approaches 0. Which means that hanapin ulit natin yung f of x plus h that's equal to x plus h squared plus 2. Next, simplifying, sabi natin ang x plus h squared is, we have x squared plus 2xh plus h squared plus 2. Substituting in our given formula, that is equal to limit of x squared plus 2xh plus h squared plus 2 minus the original function, which is x squared plus 2 all over h as h approaches 0. Next, distributing negative 1 to our binomial, that will be equal to x squared plus 2xh plus h squared plus 2 minus negative 1 times x squared is negative x squared. Negative 1 times positive 2 is a negative of 2 all over denominator as h approaches 0. Next, cancel similar terms with opposite signs. So we have x squared and negative x squared, positive 2 and negative 2. So we're left in the numerator the limit of 2xh plus h squared all over h as h approaches 0. Next, factoring out h, that will be multiplied to x or 2x plus h all over h as h approaches 0. Next, we continue. We have the limit of cancel h, the limit of 2x plus h as h approaches 0. Next, substituting 0 with every value of h in our given expression, so that is equal to 2x plus 0. Next, that is equal to 2x, which means that we have to further evaluate f prime of positive 1, which is equal to 2 multiplied by 1, and that's equal to 2. From our given example, we have shown here that the slope of the tangent line is also equal to the derivative of the given function evaluated at x is equal to positive 1. To sum it up, the derivative of a function is based on the concept of finding the slope of the tangent line to a curve at any given point. So yan po yung pinakita natin from our previous example. And do not ever forget our limit definition of the derivative, which is f prime of x is equal to the limit of f of x plus h minus f of x all over h as h approaches 0. Again, this is our limit definition. From Woodrow, sabi niya, if your life is an uphill slope, set your sails to catch God's power. Again, if your life is an uphill slope, set your sails to catch God's power. That is our lesson for this session. I hope that you have understood the concept of limit definition of derivative as well as the slope of the tangent line and the connection between the slope of the tangent line and the derivative of the given function. If you have any question, please feel free to message me via my number flashed on the first slide as well as via messenger or email. Thank you for watching and God bless.